So we're starting today with inversion and fronting. If you have My Grammar Lab Advanced, then you need Unit 76. Okay? And if you're using Advanced Grammar in Use, for the inversion part you want units 99 and 100. If you have another grammar book, you'll have to find it yourself. Okay, let's start with inversion. You know, in German, like all of the other Germanic languages, apart from English, you always have the verb as the second idea in the main clause. So you say trinkt Kaffee an Montage. So trinkt is the second idea, it comes after But if you change the word order, you'd say an Montage trinkt Kaffee. So trinkt is still in the second position. Or you could say Kaffee trinkt an Montage. Because German's weird. Right? In English, he drinks coffee on Mondays. So, yeah. But then on Mondays, he drinks coffee. So there we can't have the verb as the second idea. We can't say on Mondays drinks he coffee. That's not English. And then coffee drinks he on Mondays. That sounds like Yoda. Maybe Yoda was a German speaker. All right. There are certain situations in English, though, where we have to have the verb as the second idea. And we call this inversion, because we invert the swap the subject and the main verb. It could also be an auxiliary verb, for instance. So let's have an example. Not only was she happy, but she was also drunk. Okay, I don't know. Not only. So after not only, we have to invert. We can't say not only she was happy. It has to be not only was she happy, or not only did she climb the mountain, but she also abseiled back down. Okay, so here we have, because it's not the verb to be, so we have most verbs here. In this situation we use the auxiliary do, etc. So not only did she climb the mountain, etc. Okay. Now you'll find in your grammar book a list of all the ways that, all the types of language which introduce inversion. And you kind of need to know them. So let me have some light. So little did we realize. Okay, little did we realize. Never had they experienced blah blah blah. Hardly. Only later. Only if. At no time. So at no time during the talk was anyone allowed to blah blah blah. So at no time during the talk was anyone allowed to blah. Under no circumstances. Under no circumstances will I phone you. All right. We can't say under no circumstances I will phone you. Okay, that's not English. Not since No sooner. So no sooner had we arrived than blah blah blah, and so on. So you need to find these things in your book and make sure that you know them. Okay. Well, this is subject auxiliary inversion. We also have subject verb inversion, but before we look at that, I want to tell you about fronting. But first, just in case you're feeling bad about yourself, let me tell you, what I normally find doing this class is that 99% approximately of the students in the class have never heard of inversion. This is new information for practically everyone taking this class. And I find this strange because I think it's a very important part of English grammar. And I wonder why they don't teach you this at school. I think it might be because they spend so much time trying to get you to use normal English word order. They don't want to risk messing it up by saying, oh yeah, but sometimes you can do it the German way too. Okay? Sometimes you have to. In these situations, you have to invert. All right. So that's the first part. Fronting. Fronting is about putting certain language to the start of a sentence or to the start of a clause. So, number one, we have fronting of objects and complements. So, for example, they said he was a fool, and indeed, a fool he was. Okay? Normal word order would be he was a fool, but here we have a fool he was. So this is fronted because this clause starts here. When would you do that? You could do that if you were being dramatic, or you could do that for extra emphasis in a story. You can tell the difference. You can hear the difference, can't you? They said he was a fool, and indeed he was a fool. Boring. Okay. Number two. Adjective and adverbial phrases. Let's compare A and B. So here I want to communicate two pieces of information. I want to communicate where I'm going and the time. So I can say, I'm going swimming at 6 o'clock. Now what you're going to learn when we look at end weight is that in English we like to keep the most important information for the end of the sentence. I'll tell you that now. Okay? So if I say I'm going swimming at 6 o'clock, then although I am communicating two things, it's almost as if at 6 o'clock is slightly more important. I'm saying it's almost as if that because here's the difficult thing. I've consulted several different grammar books about this, about what is being emphasized when we have this kind of situation, and there seems to be a lack of clarity in the grammar books. I think it's also because there's a difference between whether these things are written or spoken. Because of course you could also say, I'm going swimming at 6 o'clock, and then you would certainly be emphasizing the swimming. But as a basic thing, I'm going swimming at 6 o'clock, it's quite neutral, but there is some focus on the time. Now, with adverbials of time, we often front them. So we often have them at the start of the sentence, we front them. So we can say, at 6 o'clock I'm going swimming. So we're still communicating both pieces of information. But it's as if we feel we have to say when, and we're just getting it out of the way. Just saying it quickly at the start before communicating what we really want to communicate, which is I'm going swimming. Okay? So here, at 6 o'clock, this is fronted. Right. You can see in your grammar book some of the typical situations which are where we use fronting. German loves fronting. English probably doesn't use it as much as German. I haven't seen any studies, but put it this way, we often see too much fronting in your written work. Some of you do this sentence after sentence after sentence, where you front each sentence, and we would never really do that in English. When we use it, it really has an impact. So just like, and indeed a fool he was, that has an impact because that isn't how we normally have the language. Whereas if you do that with every sentence, then it loses its impact. Having said that, it is very common with expressions of time. Okay, let's go back to inversion. Subject-verb inversion. Some of this has become formulaic language, the language which just is standard. So here, so we have an adverb of place. Here comes the bus. It would be unusual to say, here the bus comes. In fact, that just sounds wrong, okay? Notice we can't say it. We can't say, here comes it. In that case, we would have to say, here it comes. Okay. In example number 2, we have, let's see. Imagine you can see that we've got into the harbour, so we have this this adverbial here, and then we've got the verb in the second position of the second idea, and then we have the subject after that. Imagine we could just say, a beautiful old-fashioned ship sailed into the harbour. And that's fine, but you can imagine that for emphasis or to be more dramatic, or to make your language more interesting, you might say, into the harbour sailed a beautiful old-fashioned ship. Now you might be thinking, hang on, David, just before in the little video bit, when you were talking about subject auxiliary inversion, you said that we had to use, we in this kind of situation with a verb like sail, we'd have to use an auxiliary verb. Into the harbour did a beautiful old blah blah sail. No, there are certain verbs. If you have my grammar lab, it's page 327 towards the top. I don't know where it is in the other grammar books. You can see typically we might use verbs which are for place or movement. So stand, sit, lie, come, go, climb, run, sail, fly. Okay, so with that kind of verb, we can sometimes have simple subject-verb inversion. Notice that this might seem more like literary language, so something you might see stylistically in a book. Sometimes it might be used so that language sounds old-fashioned, oldie-worldy English kind of thing. But this kind of inversion is also used very regularly in normal speech as people unintentionally seek to stimulate their friends when they speak to them by actually making their language more interesting. It has more of an impact rather than always using exactly the same kind of structure. Okay. So here we have 3 sentences. I think I've used these 3 sentences once in a section 2 selection question. So you have to decide what is grammatically possible, A, B, and C. The answer is A, B, and C. All 3 are possible. So in A, we just have what you might call a standard structure. In B, we've got fronting here. Down the rain came. And in C, we've got both fronting and inversion. Down came the rain. You can imagine that someone's telling a story, and then they reach a dramatic part of the story. They're not just going to say, the rain came down. I mean, they might do, it depends. But they could also say, down the rain came, or down came the rain, and we were soaked to our skin. So now we're going to look at some of the language from today and from the last few classes. And we're going to look at an old exam paper. We won't be able to look at everything. We don't have time. Just from today and the last few classes. And obviously, we won't yet look at the stuff which we're doing in the next and final class. Okay. Your exam will look like this. I'll try not to show you the top. It's got the 4 sections: gap fill, selection, single sentences, error correction. Each section has 25 points available. There are 7 sheets of paper printed on 1 page. This exam is 90 minutes long. I tried 60 ones as an experiment because that's all you'd need, but you know, it gets hot in the exam room and people wanted more time, and why not? Let's see. When you finish the exam, please remain seated. Do not speak to anyone until the exams have been collected. Well, as you can guess, there will be more rules this time. There'll be rules connected to physical distancing and face masks, and I'm going to have to see everybody's photo ID on the way into the exam, because I don't know, I've never met more than half of you. So I, myself and my helpers, we will have to actually see who you are before you can take the exam. Okay, right, let's quickly work our way through some of these. The first section, the gap fill for tense, aspect, futurity, voice and verb patterns, and actually also modals and conditionals. And we're just going to have a quick look at the ones connected to passive voice. Okay, so number 3. Oh no, I beep by mosquitoes. Just look at my legs. So these are all going to be passive, right? And the answer to this would be, I have been bitten. If you're left-handed, by the way, this will actually be on the left-hand side of the page. It will come here after the number. And that means that your arm will not be covering the exam. I have asked you all to email me if you are left-handed and you want to have the option, so you can make the choice at the start of the exam if you want left-handed or right-handed. I've only had 1 email so far, so if that's all I have, then I will only print 1 left-handed exam. But if other left-handed people also want the option, then please do email me, and don't email me at the last minute, because I will have already printed the exams. Okay, number 6. The house, something with build. When the thunderstorm started and the builders had to run for shelter. Imagine if this was active voice and it said the builders beep their house when the thunderstorm started and then they had to run for shelter. So imagine they start, this is in the past, obviously. Imagine they started and then before they finished the thunderstorm, so that would be past continuous, right? So you just want past continuous passive here. So the house was being built. Make sure you know all the past participles. I don't want to see people writing words like builded. That's not English. Oh, and also in this section, in the gap fill, if you spell any word incorrectly, that answer is wrong. So you need to be able to spell these forms. Okay, I don't think that's too much to ask. 12, Neil something drop from the football team last weekend. Oh, you can already see it's going to be past. The coach didn't give him a prior warning. we can see that this is passive because it would be, I don't know, you could say by the coach from the football team, okay? So Neil, this is just past simple, passive, was dropped. Oh look, double P. 14. Every last drop of beer, something with drink. By the time we got to the bar, all that was left was cider. By the time we got to the bar, okay, so this is past, we got to the bar, and this is something which happened one step back in the past. It happened by the time we got to the bar, so, okay, so it's going to be past perfect, isn't it? Every last, and it's passive of course, every last drop of beer had been drunk. Drink, drank, drunk. Don't confuse that with the adjective drunk and drunken. 17. Plans for the new road, something with consider this week. The meeting started yesterday and we expect them to last until Friday. So, okay, so they started yesterday. We expect them to last until Friday. So that's this week. This week is different to most other weeks. And we are in the middle of this. And we could imagine that plans for the new road, something with consider, by the council this week. So we know that this is passive. So we know it's present, continuous, passive, right? Are being considered. 18. Some of them have to be a little more difficult, you know. 18. The letter something send yesterday. Something send. Okay, yesterday I imagine. That's how they operate. They're quite predictable. Notice how I write all this extra stuff just to make sure that only one answer is possible. You actually want a modal construction here. If you have My Grammar Lab Advanced, you can look at page 363. This is in the purple boxes with the modal verbs, which I mentioned. At the very bottom of the page, the very last one on that page, you've got will and won't plus have plus PP, past participle. Certainty about a past event. We sent the invitations on Monday, so they'll have received them by now. And in this particular case, obviously a letter can't do any sending, so actually there has to be an agent. So you can imagine this is by someone. So this is going to be a passive form. Okay, so the letter will have been sent. Okay. Sended is not a word. By the way, every time I say this and I sigh, it's because I have horrible memories of seeing these words being made up by people on their exam papers. 22. Sushi. Something eat typically, okay, with soy sauce and wasabi. This is just general, isn't it? So sushi is typically eaten. Okay. Next. Selection. Select the correct option or options for each question. Write your answer for each. Your answer will be one of these combinations and it will be written in this column. If you write it here, I won't see it. Okay, I'll only see what you have here, or over here if you're left-handed. Okay, we're only going to look at some of these. 8. This is connected to today. So, never had Zoe eaten lobster? Yes, because this is inversion. After never. Zoe had eaten never. That's shit. That makes no sense. And Zoe had never eaten lobster. That's okay. So I won't see this. I'll only see what's in the box on the right. So A, C. That's your answer. If you write AC here, I won't see it. Okay? This is a green dot, and that's because it's related to the next class. So we won't look at that now. 12. This is about commas. Well, we can say Ian's pet cats, which were good at jumping, escaped from his garden. So the basic sentence is Ian's pet cats escaped from his garden, and we've got which were good at jumping. That's just extra information. This is a non-defining relative clause. We don't need it to understand what we mean by Ian's pet cats. And so we've got both commas. So we know that A is right. B, we have Ian's pet cats, which were good at jumping, comma, escaped from his garden. No, we want either 2 commas or no commas. So C, Ian's pet cats, which were good at jumping, escaped from his garden. We've got no commas here. Now, that might seem like it makes less sense, but maybe Ian has lots of pet cats. He has some which are good at jumping and some which are bad at jumping. So we can say Ian's pet cats which were good at jumping. So in this case, which were good at jumping is a defining relative clause. It defines which cats we mean. So we need that information, and there are no commas, so that would be okay. So this would be AC. Remember, this section is simply about what is possible grammatically. Okay, 16. This one is also about commas and other things. A, it was Brad Pitt, comma, who we saw on the bus? Well, no, because of the comma. C, it was Brad Pitt, comma, we saw on the bus? Yes, again, no, because of the comma. And C, it was Brad Pitt we saw on the bus? Yes. We could also say it was Brad Pitt who we saw on the bus, but without the comma. So in this case, only C is correct. 18. You should recognise this from earlier on in this video. Ship sailed into the harbour. Yep, into the harbour the ship sailed, so that's just fronting. Yep, that's fine. I don't mind if you've got a comma or not there, okay? I'd say that because into the harbour is quite long, let's have a comma. But when I had my example with down, I didn't write a comma there, and I don't think you need to. Into the harbour sailed a ship, so we've got fronting and we've got inversion, and that's fine. So A, B, C, all of those are grammatically correct. 19 we'll come back to in the next class. Okay. Right. Section 3, single sentences. So on the left you've got 2 or 3 sentences, you've got the grammar that you need, and then you have to create one sentence with the same or very, very similar meaning. Okay. All the green ones we'll be looking at after the next class. Okay. We felt terrified. This is because lions were watching us. Passive participle clause, beep, we felt terrified. being watched, because it's passive, so it was done to us. Being watched by lions, comma, we felt terrified. If there's no comma, it's wrong. Yes, you heard. 5. My mother's name is Eileen. This book belongs to her. Okay. Non-defining relative clause not reduced. Okay. Okay. Some of these you have to think about, right? I see green dots. Okay. 13. Only one of the hotels has a swimming pool. Let's stay there. Defining clause. Notice this is not a defining relative clause, it's a defining clause. Let's stay in, or at, the only hotel, a swimming pool. The only hotel, the first man, the etc. Okay. First man to walk on the moon, the only hotel to have a swimming pool. 15. Inversion. Charlie did not have a shower. This did not happen at any time during the festival. And I've given you blank, and then just at the end, a shower. This did not happen at any time. At any time. Okay. Let's say at no time during the festival did Charlie have a shower. At no time during the festival did Charlie have a shower. Yep. It would not be possible in English to say, at no time during the festival Charlie did not have a shower. Oh, I don't know, that's just wrong, okay? 16. A man shouted at me, that's him. Defining relative clause. So that means we're going to have information that we need to understand what we mean by the man. And it's not reduced. That's a man who shouted at me. No comma. 17. The thief observed the tourists carefully. He then knew when to rob them. Active participle clause. Having observed, and I would also accept observing. I can't write it, but observing the tourists carefully, comma, the thief knew when to rob them. By the way, you don't need to write both options there, just write one. If you write two options, I will always mark the first option. So if you write two answers and the first one is wrong, then your answer is wrong, even if the second one's right. And if you write one answer on just above the other answer, I always mark the top one. So if you're not sure and you write two answers, then you're not actually writing two answers, you're writing one answer, and then you're writing a second answer, which I'm not going to look at. 18. I watched a program on television. I liked it. Noun clause. Oh, that was when we start with the WH word, typically, right? I liked what I saw on television. Yeah, that's a noun clause. 20. This is from a couple of years ago, but it's still true. The British Parliament is in crisis. The British Parliament is often called the mother of parliaments by British people. Reduced. Reduced. Okay, so there isn't going to be a relative pronoun. Reduced, non-defining relative clause. Non-defining, so that means we don't need it. Okay, that means there are going to be commas, right? The British Parliament, comma, often called the mother of parliaments, comma, is in crisis. You would need both commas. 22. Andrew said hello to the woman. She was working at Lidl. Reduced, defining relative clause. Andrew said hello to the woman. Working. Oh, we've got the at. So, just said hello to the woman working at Lidl. Okay, 23, we set off the firework, it went up. And here I want fronting, and you can choose either with or without inversion. We set off the firework, it went up. So something when we set it off. Okay, so down came the rain, down the rain came, right? Up. With or without the comma, it's optional here. The firework went, or that's just fronting, that's fronting without, and now fronting with inversion. Up went the firework when we set it off. Okay, up went the firework when we set it off. Either one of these two, I don't want both, I only want one option. 25. Oh, this is true. This is still true now as well. Passive reporting structure. Okay, Trump is not suited to his office. Many people have suggested this. Passive reporting structure. Okay, we know that obviously that's passive, and we know as a passive reporting structure, at least for this exam, that will always start with the word it. Okay, many people have suggested this, so it has been, because we want to keep the same tense and aspect, okay? It has been suggested by many people that Trump is not suited to his office, okay. And then section 4, error correction. I'm not going to go through these because this video is already far too long, so I think that should be everything for now. The next video is the last video. We'll be looking at theme and focus, especially ways of preserving end weight. Some of the language we'll be focusing on will be existential sentences, extraposition with the dummy it, passive with dummy it, cleft sentences, and pseudo-cleft sentences. Right, so that will be the last one, and I'll see you for that quite soon.